So, Oppenheimer recently came out, and I was able to see it on an IMAX screen, which was a wild experience on its own. But because it's contested with the movie like Barbie that's been successful yet controversial, I honestly feel like this movie kind of got swept aside in the media, despite its own success. So today, I wanted to give my thoughts and rating, but more importantly, I wanted to tackle some real-world themes and issues that I feel like we need to discuss. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to Spoiler Connection, where we connect you with spoiler-free and spoiler-filled reviews of movies and television shows. Before we get into the conversation, be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons to help this channel out. That being said, let's continue with the video. For the first portion of this video, I'm going to talk about things in a spoiler-free manner, but if you're wanting to get into some spoilers and deep discussion, go to this mark here. But anyways, Oppenheimer is the latest Christopher Nolan movie in his repertoire of Oscar-worthy films, and this one is certainly something else entirely. He's done some great films on fictional characters and fictional sci-fi stories, but to see him tackle a movie about a real person and a real story was something really to behold. The way he moves the camera, the practical effects he uses, and the sheer respect that all of his peers give him is just unbelievable. I mean, even Robert Downey Jr., who has played one of the most iconic fictional characters of all time, said that the feeling of being called on by Nolan was enough to make him go numb and just nod his head. So, you can really see the amount of effort that everyone puts behind the scenes. There are A-list actors and actresses everywhere here that sometimes just have a smaller role or will end up being in the background for some scenes. And that goes to show that everyone is on board with the story and the direction and not just putting a face on the camera for the, quote, ticket bait, so to speak. We get to see Oppenheimer in multiple facets of his life, where parts of his story are told through astounding visuals, heavy dialogue. We go through the past and the future, and Cillian Murphy gives off an amazing performance, full of charisma, but he can also carry some really heavy scenes that are filled with dread and tension. And when I mean dread, I mean like chest-tightening dread. There are scenes in this movie that shocked me to my core. And it's not because it showed too much of anything in particular, but just the mere implications of the unfolding events. And Cillian Murphy absolutely shines in those moments. I really hope he gets an Oscar nomination, and honestly, I hope Robert Downey Jr. does too, because he gives a great performance in this movie as well, and he has a role that I wasn't really expecting. But as the movie follows Oppenheimer's journey to building the first atomic bomb, it goes back and forth between his academic and social past, as well as connecting that to his tense future long after the bombs had been dropped. Most scenes in this movie are very dialogue heavy, and I know that can be intimidating to people, as well as the 3-hour-long runtime, but I promise it's worth it. The interactions between characters drive the story and add so much to the happy and devastating moments of Oppenheimer's life. The only real complaint I had was that it didn't really go into depth about certain aspects of his social life, which became integral to the plot much later on, but it's not a huge deal because just about everything else was just captivating outright. This movie is a banger, no pun intended. However, the bomb isn't the only thing that bangs in this movie. That's right, even Oppie gets some action. But those scenes that were shown for it were actually integral to the characters. But anyways, the story isn't just about a guy making a bomb, it's much more than that. It's a story of revenge, of regret, expectations, and the burden of knowledge and the application of that knowledge. It had me on the edge of my seat, and I want to see it again at some point because there is no way to get everything on a first viewing. So, I'm going to go ahead and give Oppenheimer a 9 out of 10. Alright, so from now on we are in full spoiler territory. I don't have time to talk about everything, so I only picked out a couple things and moments that inspired me for deeper thoughts on the film. Full warning, these subjects are heavy and not exactly for the faint of heart. So after I saw this movie, I was wrestling with two scenes in particular. One of them was after he learned the bomb had been dropped and was brought to a small building in order to give a speech on its success. Oppenheimer walks through this middle opening, hearing the sounds of people stomping their feet, which was an audio cue used many times beforehand in the movie. He's almost overwhelmed by it, and it almost makes the audience overwhelmed by it. And he gets up to a podium where he can see the crowd of people, all cheering and clapping for him, and he almost doesn't know how to react. He starts off by softly saying that the aftermath of the bombing is unclear, and you can tell he's struggling to come to terms with it or talk about it, but then he tries to overcome it by saying a line that seems to get the crowd into it. But you can see in his face that it was even hard for him to get that out. He tries to smile before his face twitches back into shock almost, when the crowd roars with joy and all noise cuts out. The people are still cheering, but there's no sound coming out of them. He hears a crack as he looks down and imagines his foot crushing part of a charred corpse, but the crowd still cheers anyways. He looks up to see a bright flash and skin on people's faces tearing away like paper mache. Regardless of the damage he caused of the lives his creation snuffed out, the crowd reveled in victory. It was a haunting scene. Yes, it was a way to stop the war and ultimately save more lives, but he felt like the blood of all of those people were on his hands. Nothing he could do or say would give life back to those people, innocent people. I think this is something we all need to be just aware of. America is a great country, the greatest the world has probably ever had, but we're not excluded from the terrors of war, and we are not excluded from the things we consider to be necessary evils. Even the best of intentions can have disastrous consequences, and Oppenheimer represents this very well. In real life, when he was asked about the bombings, he gave his famous response saying, "I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." Ugh, haunting. It touches on the essential subject I wanted to kind of get to, which was the burden of knowledge. The second scene I had in mind involves Albert Einstein. It's revealed to us early in the movie that Oppenheimer and Einstein have conversed before, and they have a short conversation that causes Einstein to look lifeless as he ignores a greeting from Robert Downey Jr.'s character. We spend the whole movie wondering what Oppenheimer said to him, and it's revealed at the end. Oppenheimer's talking with Einstein about the calculations regarding the atomic bomb and how it could potentially mean the end of the world, but then he doubles down and acknowledges that it's already done. The invention of the atomic bomb was the marker for the end of the world itself. It's too late. So Oppenheimer wrestles with the fact that his knowledge and skills ultimately led to a US victory, but at the cost of thousands of innocent lives. And that's something we humans aren't really meant to handle. We're capable of so much destruction, but we're not emotionally equipped to handle its real potential. I think about the Garden of Eden from the Bible. Adam and Eve were told not to eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But once they ate of the fruit, they became aware of nakedness, of shame, of guilt, and ultimately leading to sin. Because knowledge is the ultimate double-edged sword. The more we know, the more good and evil in the world we recognize. For every new medication we make to save lives, we also invent things to destroy them. It's a heartbreaking reality, and our fragile mortality isn't built to handle such a burden. We live in a world where so many countries can be dusted off the earth with a push of a few buttons. That's insane to me, that we live in a small glass sphere of common living, only held up by the fingertips of world powers. If one decides to pull back, the sphere hits the floor and shatters. This is all to say that these are scary times we live in. In some cases, the world is safer than ever, but the looming threat remains. So take care of the life you have and those you share it with, because you never know when the clock will stop. I know this can be frightening if we think about it too much, but it's also a reminder that our lives are precious and how grateful we should be to have the lives that we have. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you want to stay updated with the content, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.